Hello, my name is Olivia Yott, and I'm here with my group to discuss our Chally assessment results. Our group was best fit to a transactional sales role. We primarily connected with sales reps within the insurance business and real estate agents, and we're able to gain a lot of information that we are going to discuss a little bit more about today.
So first, we're going to discuss what is transactional sales. Transactional sales is a division of sales that usually involves a lot of sales calls. So it's typically very high volume. So you're going to be interacting with people face to face quite frequently. What we dealt with in our research was a lot of one-time purchase situations. So realtors selling homes to families for a one-time thing, or selling an insurance policy that will last somewhat a long time. Transactional sales encompasses a lot of other areas in sales that may not be always one-time purchase, but with our experience, a lot of it was. A big determining factor of a success rate is going to be your ability to gauge someone's readiness to buy. So obviously that just entails being able to close when it is obviously able to see fit. And another big thing that is very important is being able to understand your customers' needs and being able to personalize with them and relate to them, and make sure that you are actually listening to what they need and then applying your sales skills to fill that.
Some of the important characteristics include efficient and simplified characteristics. And an efficient and simplified characteristic is to help the customer understand the product in a small amount of time. Also, to establish trust early and build a quick relationship.
Another important characteristic would be to be relatable. Personal relationships with the customer is very important, especially with one-time purchases. Gauging where the customer is, and that kind of builds back into probing and understanding what they need and creating personal value for the customer.
And another important characteristic would be being very resilient as a salesperson, because in transactional sales, you are dealing with those high volume transactions that are happening all the time. You probably get a lot of more no's than yeses. You got to make quick decisions because you don't have that time to really build that relationship, and you see customers all the time. So being resilient is really important.
So now each of us are just going to talk a little bit more in depth about our interview and what we learned. So for my interview, I talked to Stephanie Yott, a real estate agent in Central Indiana. Stephanie was extremely open about the industry and gave great advice as well as insight on her process. From our conversation, two things stuck out to me the most. The first thing I wanted to talk about is how she creates a value proposition for the properties. She told me that the value of the property lies within the eyes of the client, and her job is typically to fill the client's wants and needs to create this value. The second thing that stuck out to me is how she explained the relationship you have to create in a transactional sales role. Stephanie says that her tactic is to treat clients as if she was helping family find their dream home. This helps create a more personal relationship where trust and honesty are at the root. The client will be way more inclined to buy from an agent that they have a personal relationship with.
For my professional interview, I interviewed Mike Longley. He's an inside sales account manager at Box Out. And in our interview, we talked about how important it is to, one, establish a routine. In that routine, you have to build a quick relationship, and then you have to close a deal. And as soon as that deal's done, you're on to the next one, and you have to keep going and going. We also talked about how it's important to handle stress that comes with the job. It's really important to stay relaxed and also to stay polite no matter what. You don't want to ruin someone else's day just because you're having a bad day and potentially ruin your brand and who you are to future clients. And the last thing we talked about was confidence. He said it's impossible to close every single deal, but you have to keep continuing to do what you do in order to succeed and stay confident.
Yeah, so I worked with Jeff Onken, who's a pretty well-known State Farm agent in the local area. One of the first things that we hit on was how important it is, especially in transactional sales, is how frequently you're talking to people face to face and what your appearance and presentation is. So he basically talked about how when he was younger, being well-dressed and looking presentable is always going to one up a lot of the competition. If you can make that a staple in your appearance, then that's huge. And another thing that we spoke on that really stuck out to me was the importance of simplifying your product. So most people, obviously you should be an expert in whatever you're selling, but your customers are not going to be experts, especially in something like insurance policies. So he just really highlighted the idea that you need to make sure that you're gathering all the information necessary, but then you're not overcomplicating it for your consumer and making sure that they just get a simplified, what is necessary that they understand about what they're getting.
For my interview, I interviewed Wilma McDougall, who is a real estate agent in Northern Indiana for McKinney's Realty. And during my interview with her, she really stressed the importance of always continuing to build your network. The more people you know, and once you have built a relationship with them, the more likely you're going to have them come back to you to find them a home. And she also stressed it's important to be smart with your time, because in her situation, she's her own boss, and it's important to use her time wisely.
So I spoke with Ralph Flores, who's an insurance agent out of Northwest Indiana. And like other types of sales, with transactional sales, you want to take the time to solve their problem, earn their trust, and be reachable. In terms of insurance, you need to take the time to understand you can't control everything in terms of, war and natural disaster. Taking the time to really talk about what you're doing and make sure the customer feels comfortable in their position. Remembering that you can't be everything to everyone, and keeping your doors open to make sure that you can help with whatever you can. Kind of the negative that I wanted to touch on that we spoke about was finding enough help. You really want to be personal, like everyone's mentioned before, that take the time to reach out to the people. Ralph gives out his personal phone number. That way his customers always feel like he's in their back pocket, and that was very important to him.
Yeah, for my interview, I spoke with Eric Seymour, who is a real estate agent in Tippecanoe County. He was very open and informative about real estate, as well as what it means to be successful in a transactional sales role. So the thing that stuck out to me was how much of a teaching and learning environment this kind of role can be. He kind of mentioned how you're always continuously learning and how important it is to keep up with current trends. That way you can kind of deliver the best value to your clients. But he also mentioned you really have to be a patient educator. And he kind of explained that many clients are going to ask you the same types of questions, and often many times during the sale, but you don't always have that time to build that long-term relationship. So you have to be a patient educator and letting them know, like, what you're selling, whatever the most important information they need to know. And he kind of went on to explain that it's just so vital, because you don't have that time. This sales role, you're dealing with this high volume of clients, and a lot of times multiple clients at the same time. So being able to efficiently educate your customers is extremely important.
Overall, transactional sales is a fast-paced sales process. And since the process is so quick, you have little time to entertain relationships. And with how fast the process goes, it's important to keep it personal when relating to the customer. Your customer's needs are the most important thing, and you need to focus on their needs before your own.